Today on Muddybeards 4x4, we're going to start the 1-ton axle swap in the trail plug. Hey everyone, and welcome to Muddybeards 4x4. I am Robbie, and today we're going to be starting my Super Duty 1-ton axle swap on the trail plug, my 1999 Jeep Cherokee XJ. And today we're going to be starting with the axles themselves. I want to do a complete teardown of these Super Duty axles to get them prepped and ready to go to start the process in the Cherokee. Now, the axles that I am working with are a set of 2004 axles out of a Ford Super Duty, and that is the Dana 60 high pinion front axle and the Sterling 10.5 rear. Now, I got these axles from a junkyard, and they came as full axle assemblies, hub to hub, which is great because I have all the parts, but I need to get these things ready to go to start the process of the mock-up to get them underneath the trail plug. So today my goal is to get these things completely torn down and down to a nice clean bare housing so I can start that process of mocking up my 1-tons. Now I'm going to go ahead and get started on the rear axle first, and the first thing I'm going to tackle is removing the axle shafts, the hub assembly, and the brake backing plate. Now this is a floating style axle, so all I need to do is remove these 8 bolts that retain the shaft, and I should be able to pull the whole shaft right out. Now, with the shaft removed, in order to remove the entire hub assembly, you're going to need this special tool. This is a 2 3/4 socketed axle nut tool that will allow you to get in and remove that retaining nut inside the hub assembly here. Now, I got this off Amazon for like 17 bucks. I feel like it's a tool that you should have and will probably use multiple times, so it's a good tool to buy. I'll leave a link in our Amazon page below if you want to get yourself one. So all I gotta do is stick this in here. I can remove that axle nut, and then I can take off the hub assembly. And by the way, just a quick tip, on the driver's side of these axles, that nut is held on in reverse rotation, so righty-loosey. Let's take this thing off. With the shaft and the hub now removed, I can now remove the whole backing plate and the brakes by removing these 24mm bolts here on the back side of the backing plate. Now with the hub assemblies all removed, it's time to get the rest of these brackets off, this old sway bar off, the old brake lines, so I can move on to cutting off the old leaf perches and removing the gears out of the pumpkin. All right, well now moving on to the gear assembly. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull the gears out. Now, one thing to definitely make sure that you do is you don't want to mix up these bearing caps. And whenever this axle gets reassembled again, you need to make sure that the bearing caps get put back on the correct place. So before I take these out, I'm just simply going to punch a couple marks here into the housing, just 2 marks, and I'll put 2 marks right onto the cap. And then I'll probably do one here and one here, just so I know when this axle goes back together, they get put in the right place. So once the bearing caps are removed, I should be able to pry out the entire gear assembly here. Sometimes it can be really tricky, especially when the axle is not secured very well. I've heard about the rag trick where you shove a rag down in there and then rotate the axle, so I might have to try that. But either way, it's time to get this whole ring and pinion set out of here. Well, that rag trick sure did the trick. All I did was just shove the rag in, spin the ring gear over, and it wedged in between the ring gear and the pinion, and I was able to pop the gear assembly right out of there. So I also went ahead and removed the pinion, and now the last thing I need to do to get this axle where I need it is to remove these factory leaf spring brackets. For that, I'm just going to use my angle grinder. I'm going to carefully cut along the factory welds here, trying my best to not cut into the actual tube itself, and see if I can't hammer these things right off. With the rear axle now pretty much stripped down, I just still need to clean up all the rust and everything and get it down to nice clean bare metal. It's time to move on to the front axle, the Dana 60 high pinion. Now these things are a few extra steps because they are the steer axle, but really these are pretty simple axles and they come apart pretty easily. We're going to begin the front axle disassembly by starting with the unit bearings and removing the axle shafts. And to begin with, there's simply a retaining ring here that holds on the locking hub. Just get in there with some pliers. And just pop it right out. Now the hub should come out, just wiggle a little bit. There's nothing else that retains it. Maybe give it a little love tap with your rubber mallet and it should come right out. There she is. Now inside the hub assembly, there is a snap ring that we must remove to take out the washers, and there's a couple thrush washers in there. I'm going to use a snap ring tool. It's better if you have the long ones, but these are all I got, but you should still be able to do it. With the locking hubs now removed, I can go ahead and loosen the 4 21mm nuts on the back of the knuckle here that retain the unit bearing, and I can slide the entire axle shaft right out. Now to remove the knuckle, just simply got to take the cotter pins out of the ball joint here with the castle nut on the top, and then remove the bottom nut down here. Now to me, this is one of the hardest parts about this, is that bottom nut, because it is on there pretty tight, and when the axle is just on jack stands like this, it's really hard to get leverage on it, and you can't get a power tool in there. By the way, that is an 1.5/16" socket. I didn't even have one. I had to go get one to get on there. But let's go ahead and get this knuckle off, and then we can begin taking out the carrier. Well, this thing's coming apart pretty easy. Got the carrier out, so now this thing is empty, ready to go. And the last step to get this thing completely stripped down is just to remove the factory brackets. Just like on the rear axle, I'm just gonna carefully cut around the factory welds and knock these suckers off. Now on the driver's side, the short side, I know I'm gonna end up having to clearance this more than likely to fit a coil bucket. Now I don't know exactly what I'm gonna do with my truss system yet, or how I'm going to, incorporate or the suspension and build that quite yet. So I'm gonna leave this alone, but more than likely I'm gonna be using a truss swap kit in which this cast part will have to be trimmed. But for now, I'm just gonna leave this alone. So let's get these bad boys removed, and I should be about done setting up these axles. All right, everyone, check it out. I now have both of these axles completely disassembled and stripped down to bare housings, and they are now blank canvases, ready and waiting for the next step in this swap process. All right, everyone, well, I know this may not have been the most exciting video to watch, just an axle disassembly, but it actually, I believe, is a really important, first step to any kind of swap process, is that initial disassembly and the prep work and the gathering of parts. This allowed me to really dig into these axles, get to know all the pieces, get to know how to assemble them and reassemble them. And so, now I feel like I have a better understanding of how these axles are put together, what I'm going to need to do to maintain them, and what I'm going to need to do to build them up so that they can go into my Cherokee for this 1-ton swap. So if you did like the video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more on this 1-ton swap in the future videos, because I will be documenting the whole thing, please make sure you are subscribed to this channel, and make sure you click that little bell so that you get the notifications when I post a video. If you want to support us even more, go make sure that you check out our website from the link in the description below. So until next time, thank you, and I will see you on the trail.